What's up, guys? Anthony and Kate here.
Hey, how's everybody doing?
Today we're going to talk to you guys about the planets. We're going to discuss their various associations and give you guys a general idea of the type of energy of each of these planets, starting with the sun. But first, Kate's going to tell us about, for a couple minutes, the changes in the astral chart, a little space weather update. Take it away, Kate.
All right, thank you, Anthony. We're just going to give you a little weekly forecast here, kind of what's going on, and concentrating only on the outer planets. If you listen to our first podcast, you know that that's kind of what we're really concentrating on, with the exception of the new moons and the full moons. Those get a little bit more personal. But the outer planets, we've still got Uranus and Taurus. We talked about this from 2018 to 2026. But Taurus is in retrograde until January 18th, 2022. So it's stalling out, and it's sitting in this lesson of Uranus and Taurus, and it's having to do with our money and the financial systems and our currency and the way that we spend money, the way that we hold money, our possessions, how we feel about money. It is currently squaring Saturn in tonight's chart. And Saturn, of course, we know is restriction and discipline. So with it squaring there, that's not a real comfortable position at all, because you've got Uranus, the planet wants to go forward, the revolutionary, and Saturn saying, nope, I'm going to hold you here. I'm going to let you learn this lesson longer. And, of course, now Uranus stalled out. So now they're both just, it shouldn't be as strong as a square, I wouldn't think, with both of them stalling out in retrograde, but it is squaring, so there's tension there. The urge to confirm, assert individuality, and the other side is, no, I need to sit here and I need to understand what this is about, and what you get is nervous tension. So I think we're seeing quite a lot of that going on out there, just in our own worlds with
Very
what's happening.
descriptive.
Yeah, and the current events, we are seeing this actually go down before our eyes, what's happening out there. Uranus sextiling Neptune, we talked about that last week, and I did not look when that ends. I think that because those planets move differently, that I don't know if that was in there last week, I don't remember, but it's sextiling Neptune, which is more of a harmonious relationship. So it's the revolter, the rebel, the Uranus one moving forward, and sudden change and shock and awe, working with Neptune, that's in Pisces, so 2026, and that's the most spiritual sign, saying I am revolutionizing and changing religion and its very structures, and there's going to be a lot of things rearranged while it is sextiling Neptune. The other thing I want to talk about is Neptune is also in retrograde, and Neptune's in retrograde from June 25th to December 1st. So Neptune's due to start moving again, but also Neptune will be in there till 2026. So we have these longer themes, longer transits, and that's why I've said, things really aren't going to start to really look different until, I think I said 2030. Because we've got all this shifting and all this changing that then has to settle in, and we have to get adjusted to it, only to have new shifts and changes. It's a continual, okay, now I understand it, and then bam, things are going to shift. And now I understand it, and then things are going to shift again. So a lot of movement that we have not seen in many, many years. Pluto is in Capricorn. We know this until 2024. Then it goes into Aquarius. That's huge. I talked about that last week. Go back and listen to that podcast for that full description. But last thing I want to bring out here is the new moon in Scorpio occurring November 4th, and that's at 5:15 Eastern Standard Time. And that's a very, very powerful new moon in Scorpio. We've got 6 positions in fixed energies. And the fixed energies are Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. So we've got this stalling out, like stopping of energies and staying. And the more planets that you have in the fixed quality, the more you're going to want to be preserving things, the more you're going to be concerned about keeping things that will endure and last. And you're going to have to achieve any results that you get here with determination and persistence. So it's like it's going to take a lot of inner strength. You've got 45% of the new moon in Scorpio in fixed qualities. So that's almost half. And then you have 32% in the mutable qualities, which are Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. And the mutable planets are more flexible. So with Earth being one of the strongest elements, we've got this water to earth kind of thing going on here, where the sea's coming up to the shore, and the shore is establishing itself against that water, and there's a lot of moving and backing and forth, and some of the shores are being changed as a result of the persistence of the fixed energies. So things on Earth are really getting shifted. It's clear, it's out in the sky, and the new moon in Scorpio is really going to help you just get in touch with your emotional nature. You know, Scorpio's water, and it's fixed. And Scorpio goes deep, 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 deep down. Pluto and Mars are Scorpio's ruling planets. And this is like, okay, I want to get to the bottom of this in my relationships with it being in Moon. I want to see what is going on in there that I can change and I can make different and I can purify. That is what that moon is all about. So any kind of shallowness in relationships, that's gonna move away. This moon is meant to be like, no, really look at what's important here. I need you to go down to the roots, which is what Scorpio rules, the root chakra, the genitals, the rectum, the anus, urethra, excuse me, genital glands, ovaries, prostate, pubic bone, genes, down, down, down. Pluto, we know, is the furthest out planet. So what you want to look for is it's occurring 12 degrees in 40 minutes. So wherever 13 degrees is in your chart is where you want to really focus. And we know the moon is the unconscious realm. It is our emotions. It's the female energy, the yin, the receptivity. So this is a feminine moon that we're experiencing, which is really important to understand. Scorpio holds things like a container, and it holds it so it can analyze it. So we have to be careful with that. It can be too much. But Scorpio is the death card, and I'll close with this and hand it back over to you real quick. But death is the 13 card in the tarot, and it's transformation, endings, closure, regeneration. So the death card is the skeleton riding on the horse, and it's getting down to the bare bones of your feelings and letting all the impurities, staying fixed there in that water, letting all the impurities come off so that you rise as something new. So not an easy new moon, but a great new moon to, really put some significant changes in your relationships, because the power is there to do it. And last thing I should say, it's opposite Uranus in retrograde, of course, in the first house of the ascendant in the person. So fixed energy in the 7th of others, hitting back the first energy in Taurus. This is also fixed, and it's wanting to accomplish some change, deep change with relationships. That's the theme. So, yeah, I'll hand it back to you. Thanks.
Wonderfully said. And I think your description of the current sky is just, you really don't have to stretch it or think about it too hard to see how it relates. I mean, it's really like right in your face.
Yeah, it really is, isn't it? Especially Pluto and Capricorn. We've just seen, oh, man.
Very chaotic energy. So if you want to change something up, now's the time. Go with the flow.
Exactly. And it's not, I don't feel a time for fear, because we do have this knowledge. And when we have this knowledge and this understanding of who we are, and we incorporate it, it can keep us in the center, which is what it's designed to do. And center is going to be different than the way you do, Anthony, right? So should I go into the sun here? Start talking about the sun? You ready for that?
Yes, we're ready for the sun. So
All right.
we'll start there with the story of the Aeon of Osiris. So as the story of the Aeons goes, around the time humanity realized that the sun fertilizes plants, they also figured out that a man has to fertilize a woman for a baby to come out. Before that, woman was God because life just sprung up from the ground. Life just sprung out of a woman. They hadn't, gotten that far in their evolution to figure that out yet. So around the time agriculture came around to figure out the sun was necessary, this is when the sun became associated with masculine energy, or at least we could see this is why the sun became associated with masculine energy.
Wow. That's interesting. I don't know if a lot of people know what you mean by eon. Can you talk a little bit more about that? I-O-N, is that correct?
A-E-O-N.
Pardon me, okay.
It's a, how to put it, story or mythology in Western esotericism, where basically things progress from the Aeon of Isis, the Aeon of the Mother, where most gods were female and most civilizations were matriarchal. Then it progressed to the Aeon of Osiris, which we just talked about, and currently we're in the Aeon of Horus, the Aeon of the child. It is not a fetishization of the mother or the father. It's a concentration on the result of their union, a balance of their energies. And there are a couple proposed future aeons where, well, some people will argue that we're already in the Aeon of Mat, of truth and justice, and then there's another Aeon before that, after that, where basically we all assimilate back into the source. And I should mention one Aeon that's not often mentioned that has to do with our beloved Pan. That even before the Aeon of Isis, it is said that there was the nameless Aeon. It was just hunting and gathering, the primal Aeon, where primal energies ran rampant.
Mm-hmm.
The Aeon of Pan.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. I was at an event with some other individuals of like mind, and Pan's just been a synchronistic theme that just, you know how that works.
Mm-hmm.
Things just don't leave you. They keep coming back for a reason. And sometimes you wonder, well, is my energy drawing that, and that's why it's happening, or is it a message? So that's up to us to discern. But one of the gods that they were talking about were the horned gods, and I just, I had to laugh because Pan falls into that.
They're all, if you look at the horned god in any culture, it's always representing a primal type of energy that's supposed to remind you that we are part animal, that we came from animals. That's always what the horns are representing.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the book called The Book of the Horned One by a pseudonym Aeon 131, he makes this argument that all of these horned gods are parts of Pan. And it's quite an interesting grimoire full of philosophy and practical and some not so practical exercises, because not everyone can find a place in the woods where they can go and camp naked and get drunk as fuck. But so that if you really want to get in touch with Pan, that's going to be the best way to do it, because that's just the kind of god Pan is. That's what he loves. That's who he is. That's what he does.
Yeah, and so I learned, there's a whole side comment on that. I learned a lot about alcohol studying the Native American cultures and their idea of, what alcohol stood for, fire, water, and just the whole story behind that. And so I can totally see that in drunkenness. I mean, this is one reason why I stay balanced with my alcohol, man. I have a good time, don't get me wrong, but yeah. Read about that sometime.
I'm sorry, finish.
No, I said read about that sometime, the fire, water.
Oh, I will.
Yeah.
It's not just alcohol that's associated with Pan. It's just alcohol happens to be the most popular drug throughout history. It's generally, drugs and debauchery and just enjoying the physicalities of life.
Right. Just really just being in the moment.
Yep.
Reckless abandon is what comes to mind when I think of Pan.
But within reason, because Pan is only half animal, and he's also half human. So don't get carried away. Don't be consumed by addictions. He's only half animal.
That is so wise. See, it's all there, isn't it? It always is there. That is a great point. I love it. All right, well, the sun, are you done? I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, you can continue.
Excellent information. Thank you. I appreciate your insight, man. All right, so the sun, according to scientists, historical and written knowledge, I wrote this up earlier, of the sun in modern times, okay? So how do scientists see the sun now? And what are they writing about? And they're telling us the sun is 4.6 billion years old. So it's just a physical star. It's 4.6 billion years old. But you know what's challenging for me about that? Is I do a lot of researching online. I have a lot of books. I go to libraries, like you, just really like to understand things deeply. And I find myself sitting back and saying, how do I know this is the truth?
Right. Because when you think about it, when you're reading things in textbooks, even if it's science textbooks or history textbooks, and I'm not anti-science or anti-history, but it is a fact that unless you go out into the world and make these observations yourself, unless you take these measurements yourself, you are taking someone else's word for it.
Yeah, and how about the whole theory out there, and we won't go down there, we'll grab this back, I won't let us get off track, but the whole theory that there's some controllers out there that manipulated history and rewrote history.
Oh, yeah. If you apply the same standards of, what is proof, what is fact of science to history, we don't know shit. Yeah. Direct observations, we can't directly observe history, we can't repeat history. It could have been almost anything.
Well, and here's the thing, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist where I run around my head falling off. Not that all conspiracy theories are, but I entertain a lot of information like you do, like varied, all kinds of subjects. Like nothing's off limits. And when I studied about the Federal Reserve and found out the true story, I read Creature from Jekyll Island by Griffin, okay. Mm-hmm. When I understood what happened to our farming system and how it happened and how we got GMOs, like I actually studied the history of and watched documentaries like how did this happen? Now, supposing that information was true, right? But when you see patterns in society, and I'm going to get to this with the sun a little bit, you start to say, okay, not only here is it showing up like that, but it's showing up like this over here too, and you see these consistencies. That's when you step back and you're like, well, this isn't just a synchronicity anymore. Mm-hmm. There's a pattern here. And when there's patterns, I think there's proof.
As above, so below, as within, so without.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah. And it's all subjective. My truth, what I believe, you may not, and what you believe, I may not. It's all subjective, and that can be based on experiences. This could go on, and it's quite interesting. And you wonder why we don't agree, right? Not me and you, but in general, why don't people agree? Well, my goodness,
We could do a whole episode on what is reality. And there's an objective reality and subjective reality, and they both exist at the same time. And we can go on for a while about it.
Oh, man, we could talk about that, couldn't we? I know a little bit, too. All right, well, so what I share on the sun, I just kind of preface that. It's in the parameters of esoteric study now in writings. I'm not really going by what man thinks the sun is. I'm going back to what man used to think the sun was. Before, I think we had the Great Reset, and that's another story. But, and symbolism, because the symbolism of the sun is really important, and we see it all throughout history. If you look back in antiquity. And I understand that even some of those things could have been corrupted and presented in ways to lead us astray, right? And confuse us. But it's not been my experience when I began to really look at the symbology of the sun. And when the sun came into my life, it actually came through the tarot. So, I had no idea about the symbology. I was a banker. I was basically in the financial system. I didn't think about the sun. I was the sun. Yeah. No shit. That's what I felt like. My ego was like as big as the sun. It was. Yeah. So the repeated patterns is what I'm going to talk about here. And the symbology of it, I think if you study it, it can really profoundly affect you because there's a psychological impact here with symbolism, right? Would you care to comment on that at all?
Well, there's the mundane idea of it. People see a symbol associated with something, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's always what that symbol has been associated with. Like how we've talked, like how you just mentioned the corruption of symbols, but also the power of symbols is you can meditate on them and things will just come to you. It's you are matching the vibration, and epiphanies will happen.
See, that's beautiful right there. You said something. You match the vibration and epiphanies will happen. Everything vibrates. And we really should go into the hermetical principles and stuff at some point.
Oh, we'll get there.
Yeah. Everything vibrates. Everything is an archetype. Everything has a meaning and an essence to their vibration. So that's huge to remember. Well, I have seen, the clear need to balance this powerful archetype because it is very powerful, and the energy. And I wrote here, for it is like a fire within my bones that can warm, sustain, and heat my soul or consume me. Always there is duality. And I underline that, right? Always there is duality. And you want to explain...
Don't be a workaholic.
Yeah, you want to explain duality? I'm not sure if everybody knows what that means. Like, obviously opposites, but like... In our world, in our 3D materialistic world, there's duality here. What does that mean?
Well, there's the Hermetic law that, opposites are the same in quality, only differing in degree. And also, there's the Kabbalistic view. Everything was separated. Originally, it was beyond duality. Everything is one. And then it descends. There's that first separation of Chakma and Bina, of yin and yang. So that's duality on the higher level.
Thanks for that, man. That's good stuff. All right, so in Sanskrit, it is pronounced, the sun is pronounced Sura, and in Latin, it's Solisa. Greek, it's Helios. In French, it's Soleil. Like surface, Soleil.
Oh, that's interesting. And Sura is interesting because there's the Seraphim, there's the Sephiroths, although that's a little straying, but that's interesting too.
And of course, English is the sun. So astrologically, which is where I'm going now with the sun, because it is a different viewpoint, although they're all layers, but it's its own science in itself within astrology. The sun's known as a luminary, like the moon and like Venus, luminaries. The very core of your personality here, where the sun is in the sign in the house, as well as the aspects, that's going to describe how you express your energy, right? And wherever the sun goes in your chart, it's gonna interject and do what's called aspecting with other planets and houses. So this is where you spread your light and your heat, therefore your very substance. And it's for how we are to be. Wherever the sun is in your 9th house, and this is more Western here, I should have prefaced that. The Vedic system relies more on the star system in a different way, and they look at the ascendant being extremely important. And I tend to lean towards that, but that's a whole other conversation. The sun in astrology is going to rule Leo, and Leo is fixed fire energy. So what do we know about fixed fire? Those two elements together.
Basically, it's like the body of fire. the physical part of fire.
That's right. That's right, exactly. And the 5th house that Leo rules, since the sun rules Leo, we need to look, well, what does Leo rule? So the sun in these areas is where it's going to come out the most. And that's in your creativity, and your recreation, and your entertainment, and your pleasures, and your romance, your children, huge, and how you play. And we become overheated and can wither and combust and thus cease to be. And not enough, and we do not grow, nor become stronger. And we're stunned, and therefore I cannot live up to my full potential.
Well, the overheating is kind of more like Aries, which it's exalted in, which I think is a good differentiation, because Leo is normally seen as very like noble and magnanimous and like trustworthy, and Aries is almost that the Leo energy, you know, the fire energy, and kicked into overdrive. It's cardinal, not fixed.
That's right, and that's where the modality is so important in the element. How is it expressing itself? It's crucial, because what's really neat is we have the expression of fire in different ways. But Mars is important here too, now that you brought Aries into it. And the reason why Aries it seems that way is because Mars is his personal planet. So you got fire and fire, right? Because what does Mars need to do? He's the 1st house. He's got to push up and through the earth. He has to be born. The hardest thing to do. You know, once the seeds push through the earth, it can grow better. But it's got to get through all of the, like the lotus in the mud analogy. You've heard of this?
No mud, no lotus.
Yeah. So Aries is what? The man of war. And we need him to be, because he's the guy that's going to rush to the front and go and be. And we need all of the different aspects of fire, right? What about mutable fire?
Sagittarius.
Yeah.
I've heard this called the gay sign.
Oh, is that right?
Sign. I just heard some correlation of homosexual people are disproportionately Sagittarius, and Sagittarius do kind of have an outgoing, fiery, one might say flaming kind of attitude.
That's interesting. That's not anything I've studied, gender specifics in charts. I've kind of been more hung up on the whole psychology piece of it.
Oh, you're definitely in the more respectable, valid territory. That's just some shit I heard.
No, bad. No, listen, man. I go in there and look at mass murderers' charts. Hitler's chart. Hitler has
figuring that out too.
Oh, we got to do. You know what? We'll do an episode on that, and we'll meet ahead of time. We'll talk about the mass murderer charts, and I'll send some to you, and we can talk about them. I'm telling you, it's unbelievable. The same things occurring over and over and over, and the same types of individuals expressing themselves and how well they do it and where they do it.
Red flags to look for in your partner's birth chart.
This is why you need to know it. Okay, so the sun is the most powerful influencer in Western astrology. It symbolizes the ego, the self, consciousness, your basic drive for significance, your willpower, your purpose, vitality, strength. The 8 card, right? Love that card. All
very fiery.
I love strength card in number 8. And authority. And physically, it's going to rule the heart, the spinal cord, and the thymus. And the chakra is the 4th chakra, which is the heart, within the energetic body. So remember, where our heart is, so is our home and our center, right? So the sun is crucial. I mean, it's crucial. We don't ever want to elevate any one thing, because you've got so many moving pieces out there. But the sun and the moon is the personality, the psyche, along with Mercury. Venus is how you relate to others. And then you want to make sure that you just look at how they're aspecting back and forth, and that'll tell you how your sun is behaving. But the symbol, I think this is fascinating. I love studying this part of this, because I haven't looked at a lot of different symbols for the sun. I've looked at them more within the cards and the different decks, and then, of course, the books I've been reading. But I went online and looked at symbolism of the sun. I don't know if you're in front of your computer. Go check that out. pull up the images of the sun that we have throughout antiquity. Now, this is, of course, looking at this saying that this is truth. Do we know that these people painted these? Right? How do we know that? Because somebody told us. So much you just have to be like, I guess this is the way it is, or are they just doing this to give us propaganda to believe a certain way? And I don't want to have this me versus they mentality because I don't live like that. But you have to question everything, is what I'm saying. Right?
Of course.
All right. So, depending on where you live in the world is how you're going to see the sun depicted and how the sun was represented within different cultures. So in astrology and esoteric circles, the symbol is a circle with a dot in the middle. And of course, the circle is there is no beginning and there is no end, and life continues on, and the cycles keeps going around the circle. And you think of Elton John's song here? The circle of life, right? The wheel of fortune. So the dot in the middle is us, the center energy that emanates from the circle, much like a human cell in the nuclei.
There is a whole other metaphor that gets used with the circle and dot in Western esotericism. It's that, I forget exactly where it was first written, but I first encountered it in Crowley's writings. It was lean out to find the feminine and lean in towards the point for the masculine. Is if the great mother is all things, the great father is all, that dot in the middle that is the essence of all the physical things.
That's beautiful. See, and I can totally grab that and meditate on that, and it's a whole different understanding of it, and they're both beneficial.
But it is interesting because if you go back to, if you could find the beginning of the circle and the dot for the sun, there might be a connection, or it might be completely different.
Yeah. You'd have to go back and, really dig into a lot of stuff with the sun. And I just didn't, dig that far. I was just blown away. I just sat and looked at image after image of, and if you do that, it kind of almost gives you a pictorial history lesson. It's interesting. But
right.
It's a solar symbol, right? Solar is always really huge, so it's usually in the sky or representing some kind of a solar situation. So circles and crosses and spirals showed up a lot. And in religious depictions, there's these personifications of the sun or solar attributes around individuals. So it's like a crown, right, or rays coming off of them, like the Virgin, especially in Catholicism, a lot of the artwork that we see in that, that time period, you see just the radiating sun coming out. So,
and actually, there is a good reason it forms a crown. And actually, I'll let you finish this, and we'll get to that when we talk about the Kabbalistic attributions of, the sun being in Tipareth.
Yes. Don't forget about the crown. Okay. I'm almost finished here, but I want to read this. This was from BahaTeachings.org, The Spiritual Symbolism of the Sun, and I thought this was fascinating. In a Baha metaphor, the sun symbolizes the creator in prophets like Krishna, Moses, Jesus Christ, Mohammed, Zoroaster, Buddha, the Bab and the Baha'u'llah, I guess that's how you say it, I'm sorry if I slaughtered it, acts as mirrors, as pure and perfectly polished reflectors of the sun's rays. This passage below describes that metaphor in the context of progressive revelation, one of the central beliefs of the Baha'i faith. The sun of divinity and of reality has revealed itself in various mirrors. Though these mirrors are many, yet the sun is one. The bestowals of God are one. The reality of the divine religion is one. Consider how one and the same light has reflected itself in the different mirrors or manifestations of it.
Perfect.
souls
This is
who are
all.
lovers of the sun.
Oh, you cut out. I'm sorry. You cut out for a second.
No. Oh, did I? Okay.
Yeah, I thought you stopped talking.
Nope. There are certain souls who are lovers of the sun. They perceive the effulgence of the sun from every mirror. That is so beautiful. I got to read that again. I'm one of these. There are certain souls who are lovers of the sun. They perceive the effulgence of the sun from every mirror. They are not fettered or attached to the mirrors. They're attached to the sun itself and adore it, no matter from what point it may shine. But those who adore the mirror and are attached to it become deprived of witnessing the light of the sun when it shines forth from another mirror. The concept of progressive revelation points out that God will never leave humanity without spiritual guidance. And as time passes and humanity changes with it, we need updated guidance. We can develop higher and higher levels of understanding as God reveals new teachings to us. The challenge here is narcissism, because that's the shadow of the sun's energy. And in Tarot, when the sun is reversed, we're pouring all our energy down onto the earth, right? And it's all
Perfect.
about material things and things that matter in our hands and building empires and structures and the egoic pursuits without considering spirit. And with that, I'm handing it over to you.
What a perfect transition, because every bit of that was Kabbalistic. The lights, the reflections, and I'm going to tell you how right now.
Okay.
In the Kabbalistic tree of life, and I should just state, if we start confusing people, if you don't know about Kabbalah, in the future we're going to go very in depth with each sphere and explain all of this. Anything you might not understand, we will explain in the future. So on the Kabbalistic tree of life, the sun is attributed to Tipareth. And the magical images of Tipareth are a majestic king, a child, and a sacrificed god. And that's what I meant by there's a good reason for the sun forming like a crown. And they are, the child, the baby Jesus, and the sacrificed God, obviously the Jesus on the cross. Christianity is sun worship.
Right.
And,
yes.
Right.
Yes.
And now that we go to, when we're talking about reflections, Tipareth is the first reflection of the first sphere, Kether, which is the one. It is before anything split off into duality. It's almost like soul and spirit in one. It's that prime force that connects us all and is everything. And this is the one God. Now, this isn't your Sky Daddy God. This is the true one God. And Tipareth is the first reflection of Kether, because if you look in the Kabbalistic tree of life, Kether is in the middle pillar on the very top, and Tipareth is the first one directly below Kether. And in between Kether and Tipareth is the abyss. It's not manifested. It's not even close to the manifestations of physicalities. So this is how Christians rationalize that Jesus is God. It's not polytheism. Jesus is the one God incarnated below the abyss. And this also makes sense as to why, if it's sun worship, why is Jesus' birthday celebrated in the winter and why is his birthday celebrated in the winter and his death is celebrated in the spring? You would think spring is new life and winter is death. Mm-hmm. But if you're the one God, and keep in mind that in these old monotheistic traditions, physicality, anything physical is seen as evil. The feminine, physical is evil. Yes. So when you're the one God descending into matter, your birth into matter is basically like death for you. And when you can finally leave the physical plane and go back up to where you came from, I mean, that's closer to birth for them.
I understand that. It's fascinating, the tree of life. Isn't Tipareth means beauty?
Yes, it does.
And doesn't everything touch Tipareth in the middle? Like 6 is a victory number. By the time you overcome the ego, you've accomplished, or balanced, I should say, not overcome.
Right. It's not that Tipareth touches all the spheres. It's that it is, if you look at its position, it is in the center of 6 of them. It touches most of the spheres, actually, and it has paths going to most of them. It's called the mediating intelligence. It's the transmuting intelligence, which is all these stories of Jesus transmuting water into wine, or one fish into many fish.
I just heard about that, just a side note on this, that in studying the original meaning of the Bible, how we got it, and I've just been on that road for 5 years, so that would be a fascinating broadcast. But that the parables was the milk, and the meat is what we're talking about, that was taken and rewritten. And these writers that write a lot of what we're referring to and what we've studied, we're trying to preserve it.
Right. I mean, the exoteric Christianity, which you learn, just as a regular person growing up in church or whatever, I mean, that's basically like kindergarten level spiritual science.
Right. It's the milk.
I mean, that's what made me...
the parables. It's the stories.
It was just so fucking ridiculous. None of it made sense. But when you take into point the Kabbalistic points of view, it all starts to actually make fucking sense.
That is so true. And, I had a Christ consciousness conversion experience in 1982, which I did that video on. And that was no joke. And that's a whole nother story. But I then moved into religion pretty heavy after that. But then I came out because I woke up to other things, and I began to see that, okay, religion served its purpose, and I get it. But being spiritual is really far more important, because being spiritual is what we're talking about tonight. Looking at things differently and the true essence of it. And it's a very personal thing. Like it's all about, what can you do to change? Don't worry about the world. What can you do? How can you not have the sun be reversed in your life? How can you stop pouring so much out that you've lost connection with spirit? Because we can't lose connection with spirit, whatever that means to you, but we know that it's that higher vibration. We know when we move out of lower earthly dense vibration. We know it. It feels different when we move up through meditation and intuitive works. You begin to transform and transmute and change, and you have what's called alchemy occur just by studying the sun card or the sun image or learning about it.
Meditate on all these symbols you can learn.
Yes, absolutely. We're supposed to. They're not random. They're replacent in our history. They're everywhere, these symbols. It's fascinating.
I believe you mentioned before about the pride of the sun, the vice for Tipareth. Every sphere has a vice and a virtue. Well, some don't have vices, but the vice for Tipareth is pride, and that's exactly what you talked about.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, I find the tree of life fascinating, having come from, like I said, religion, and I went to Bible college. Then I studied the Bible for years and was heavily into the church and served with my husband. He was a chaplain and I was a pastor's wife. So I'm just saying, like, I was there, and it's fascinating to see the perversions.
Yeah,
not all of it. I believe there's a lot of truth in there, because Proverbs, man, there's some good stuff in that book. It changed my life. because I had a lot of things I needed to address because of, what I came out of. But it also, these Bible sayings, they show up in works that were written before the Bible.
Oh, yeah. Most of the Bible has come from Egyptian mythology.
There you go. No, it's really true, and I know that might really freak some people out, but you got to study this for yourself.
And we were just reading the Corpus Hermeticum. I mean, and we think of that as very, very Christian flavored, but that came before Christianity. And the Corpus Hermeticum is a combination of Greek and Egyptian ideas of the time it was written.
Yeah, I'm fascinated with it, and the Kabbalion too. We gotta look at that.
I mean, I kind of fucking hate the Corpus Hermeticum, and it's like it hurts me to get through it, but I feel like I have to get through it because of all the fucking anti-feminine stuff. Matter is wholly evil, and like the body is wholly evil, and that shit just makes me fucking sick. I just wanted to burn that fucking book, but there is wisdom in there, and I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I am really fascinated into how this influenced the Golden Dawn and, Crowley and all the magical shit that this inspired, alchemy.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think about it. Religion came in hard and fast. We wiped out the Indians and took all the magical away and the connection to Earth and replaced it with European. Listen, I'm sorry that happened, and, I think the brothers are rising again and realizing their worth and their value and how we need their medicine. But along with that came a lot of the way that they did God. And it seeped into our soil and to where we are today, where you've got these planets, which whenever they've been in these positions, we've seen great change and shifts. Go back and look at the history of some of the aspects I mentioned, and you'll see it. But something I wanted to ask you, the Sun card in the Hermetic Tarot. I want to read this real quick. What time we got here? Oh, we're at an hour. I guess maybe we'll have to do that another time.
No, remember, hour minimum. Remember, we're not really capping it. If we're talking, we're talking.
All right. Well, great. Well, here we go. I'm going to read this real quick then, because I want to know your insights on this. I find this fascinating. Here we go. So the Sun card in this deck, it's a black and white deck, which I love. It really just simplifies. It's called Lord of the Fire of the World. Lord of the Fire of the World. It's number 19. So 9 and 1 is a 10, reduces to a 1, a new beginning. It's the first. And why does it always seem like male comes first and then female? Like it's always yang and then yin. How do we know that? But that's another conversation too. But Lord of the Fire of the World, it says Resh, head. Beneath a fiery sun, two children dance wildly, and roses appear between them and behind each of them. The roses represent the flowering of the solar influence. The dancing sirens are young, shameless, and innocent. The sun and its heat are a beneficent source of life and a melter of the waxen wings of ambition and curiosity. The sun radiates upon the children. It is Hiru Ra Ha, Lord of the new Aeon. Meanings: glory, gain, riches, satisfaction, arrogance. Reversed: unhappiness, possibility, broken engagement, loneliness. So what do you think of that? Comments?
Well, it definitely makes sense, given that we're talking about all its fiery aspects. It's basically, a card of everything we just talked about. And the Heru Raha stuff,
yes,
I would love to get into that eventually, because that's like a triple conglomeration of 3 different Egyptian deities, and I really got to get into Egyptian mythology eventually, because it's shit like that that I've been reading about in Crowley that's really sparked my interest in everything esoteric, really.
I got you. Well, the Sun card in the Tarot is represented by the second chakra, which is the Sacral Chakra, and the sixth chakra, which is the third eye. Oh, man, there's a lot to say about that. It's basically balance and harmony coming in the third eye to your sacral chakra, which is the sexual organs. It's your drive and your passion and where you create, right?
Mm-hmm.
But think about it.
Well, it is a reflection of the creator.
Right, and who's creator? What does your creator look like is how that's all going to show up in your life. It's basically as above, so below. All right, well, there's runes to this. Do you ever look at the runes?
You mean like Norse runes?
Yeah, runes. The runes.
You mean, so the Golden Dawn deck has runes, Nordic runes associated with each card?
The card itself, in a layer of its history, has runes associated, of which I identified, and I was going to share several.
Oh, that's very interesting. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so don't shoot the messenger on the pronunciation. Okay, there's one rune, and it stands for joy, hope, and perfection. And it's Wunjo, W-U-N-J, long O. It's about happiness, comfort, harmony, prosperity, well-being, optimism, and cooperation. The rune shows the connection between these ideas gained through fellowship with one fellow beings. Victory through cooperation, the only lasting victory. Snap! Think about that. So it's asking you to connect with others in this rune, which I thought, we really haven't brought that out. It's all just been self, right?
Yep, I'm sorry, keep going.
No, please, go ahead.
I was going to say, that's the magnanimous, king-like sun energy we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm. The other rune is Jira, which means harvest or year. It's the harvest rune. And efforts are realized, success earned through hard work, peace, plenty, and happiness secured. It points to the cyclical nature pattern that if you have patience and correct energy, things will always come around in their own time. This is natural, not unnatural development. A farmer's crops take their time to reach fruition, everything in its season. Jira can also refer to karma, and as such, the end result may not necessarily be positive, but necessarily just. Now, that ties into the whole reincarnation story in astrology, that you can find your past life. It ties into this layer with the Jira rune, that the sun that you're born under is a result of your karma from your past life, and what you need to evolve and become higher at and overcoming. And this archetypical energy footprint that you were born under will help shape you to do that.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's a couple more, but hey, I've been talking. Well, there's the I Ching. Let me share that real quick, and I'll give it back to you.
The sun in the I Ching?
Yeah, the I Ching, I Ching. Do you know it? Do you know it very well? Have you studied it?
I am aware of it. It is on my list.
Oh, man. Me too. I've been reading through it, but it's one of those books that's like before the other 12. But it's fascinating. It's Hexagram 64, which means not yet fording, Fording. It's before completion, incompletion. Wei Qi intimates progress and success in the circumstances which it implies. We see a young the stream when its tail gets immersed. There will be no advantage in any way. So here it comes out where the ego is being shown. Too strong. In Hexagram 64 is how I see that and interpret it.
And that is all of the sun? I mean, like, is that hexagram representing the sun, or is that an aspect of the sun?
It's an aspect of the sun, yeah, that identifies with the sun, which is why the hexagram comes up attached to it.
It's the prideful aspect of the sun.
Exactly.
Its vice is in a hexagram.
Yeah, it seems like there's, in the runes, they show characteristics of how the sun would express itself. Isn't that interesting?
That's so interesting. It seems like they really broke it down into a lot more parts than they did in the West.
Of course they did, right? Think about that. We don't even need to. My goodness. Okay, so the crystals are amber, tiger's eye, diamond, bloodstone, and sunstone. Those are the crystals to have around you to help with your sun. They'll bring out the brilliance and the radiance of it. Diamonds, I thought, was neat. On a woman, you think of diamonds on a woman and how that can bring out her radiance and beauty, like around her neck, it sparkles.
They do shine.
Yes, it's interesting.
It is literally radiant.
Oh, there you go. So, yeah, that's all I got for the sun.
That's all we got, guys.
Is that all we got? We don't got no more? Okay.
No. Thanks.
All right. All right, man.
Back in about a week. I hope to talk to you guys again.
Yeah, hey, huge shout out. We are on Facebook. Under all things Esoteric Podcast. Yeah, I made a page. I believe it's a page, a podcast page. Hey, we're going to post stuff there like my new moon videos and my full moon videos. Yeah. Anything else that you feel we need to post there, we can put it on there. And if you want something covered, I wanted to put this in. If you want to have an episode on something maybe you're curious about, please email us at allthingsesotericpodcast@gmail.com.
Or anything we talked about that we didn't explain clearly, or
that's great.
That we just touched on briefly that you'd like to know more about.
Yeah, clarification questions, right? Is that kind of what you mean?
Yeah.
Right on. All right, well, may the sun shine upon you all, and keep your heads up, because if we stick together, it's all going to work out, just like the sun asks us to do. And be strong in ourselves and cooperate with one another, and let's just, love truly wins, doesn't it?
I hope so.
Right on. Okay, all right, well, good night.